I started playing the acoustic guitar and like writing songs right around when Bush was first appointed president. I sort of got into activism through punk rock, right? I got into the political punk rock scene very early on. I had a neighbor of mine worked at a convenience store with this guy who was in this like social justice activist punk band, and so the first punk bands I heard were like the Sex Pistols, the Dead Kennedys, and this local band called Chaotix from Baltimore County, and they were really activist driven. That was like their intention. So the first punk shows I went to were like, you were getting flyers about animal rights, about environmental activism, about the, you know, like the NATO intervention in Kosovo and all these, you know, all these, this politics was going on. So I very immediately was drawn to that. And so punk rock for me was always tied to activism. So in my hometown in Towson, Maryland, which is a suburb north of Baltimore, like I was like really like the activist of the punk scene, trying to get the punks to come and do demonstrations. And so we did tons of demonstrations. I mean, we traveled around together, we rented vans, we went to the mass, you know, this was the anti-globalization movement. So all of this all happened at the same time. I got into punk rock and politics. The World Trade Organization protests in Seattle happened, and it was just like, I'm part of this. This is me, you know?
Okay, I'm assuming you were pretty much really a kid still at that point, right?
I was 14 or 15 when Seattle happened.
That's really cool.
But I was paying attention to it because this local punk band in Baltimore called Apolitical was singing songs about the World Trade Organization, and we're handing out flyers about the protests in Seattle and all of this. So when I started writing folk songs, well, I should say, like, so I started writing folk music because I got, I can actually trace it to the punk band Rancid. Rancid has a song where they mention Billy Bragg. I was like, well, if Rancid, I love Rancid. I have a Rancid tattoo on my wrist. But I was like, well, if Rancid likes Billy Bragg, then I must like Billy Bragg. So then I started listening to Billy Bragg, and I was like, I like Billy Bragg. And then Billy Bragg has a song where he mentions, well, he has a song about Phil Oakes called I Dreamed I Saw Phil Oakes Last Night. And then I got into Phil Oakes, and I heard Phil Oakes, and I was like, I want to do this. Like, I want to be this political and play folk music. And
Beautiful.
I had never played guitar before that. So I borrowed a guitar, and 3 days later I wrote my first song, and it was like, that was it.
Okay, so you mentioned punk music as the background and the lead into it, and then you've developed into folk. Mm-hmm. Where do you reside now? Are you riding both those rails still, or are you focused more with your acoustic guitar and songwriting?
Like, over the last couple years, I've been forming, and finally now it's official that I'm in a punk band. After 13 years of trying, we finally did it. Mm-hmm. So I'm in this punk band called Bouncing Betty. We're all very busy. We're all like activists and students, and we all are workers, and so it's very busy. So it's kind of like this other thing. Folk music is like the main thing I'm doing right now.
Do you tour, and do you tour nationally, internationally? Can you give me a little background on that?
Well, up until this last year, I had toured actually very little, but nationally I toured a number of times, a little short, week-long, 2-week tours. And then when the Arab Spring started, I was just feeling it, and I was like, I need to get out there and play my music. I feel like it's really relevant. I feel like I'm full of this energy. And I was like pretty burned out. You know, I'm an organizer, and for 5 years I've worked with Iraq Veterans Against the War very, very closely. I co-founded an organization called the Civilian Soldier Alliance that works directly with veterans and soldiers. So I was like tired, and I was like jaded, and music was still a place where I could be hopeful and tell my stories and see people like see the gears turning, see the inspiration happening, see the hope coming up, you know? And I was like, this is important, and I shouldn't like be so humble that I write it off because it's the thing I do, and be like, oh yeah, it's just my music. And I was like, no, this is an important thing, and I should like do it and see how it works. So this year I've played since July of 2011. I've played in 15 countries. I've played like 120 shows, all self-organized. I do it all myself. So I toured Europe, all over the United States, all over the Occupy movement recently. I'm on break for 2 months, and then I'm gonna go do another 2 months. Hopefully I'm gonna go to Greece, I'm gonna go to Egypt, Tunisia, I'm gonna go back to Spain, I'm gonna go to Iceland, and all over mainland Europe.
That sounds wonderful.
To both sing, but also to listen and learn the stories, and get the stories to then put those into song and stuff.
So you've mentioned Billy Bragg and Phil Oakes. Where does he, Woody Guthrie or Bob Dylan, like come into your picture?
Those are good questions. Dylan, not so much.
Right.
Like, I was never really into Dylan.
Okay.
Like, there's there's Dylan songs that get me nostalgic about time periods and stuff like that, but I was never a Dylan person. And I always get like angry at the folk singer, the white male folk singer will forever live in the shadow of Bob Dylan. And it's weird because like Phil Oakes and Buffy St. Marie and, you know, Eric Anderson and these other 60s folk singers I'm way more interested in than I was ever in Dylan. Guthrie, on the other hand, I love Woody Guthrie.
Right.
And I think that, I mean, one thing, there's so much that one could say about Woody Guthrie, but like one thing is that Woody Guthrie, Howard Zinn credits Woody Guthrie for getting him interested in history. And Howard Zinn has been a huge effect in my life. Howard Zinn said he heard the song Ludlow Massacre by Woody Guthrie and was like, why have I never heard of this? Okay. And then look what he did. And so it's like, whoa, okay, a musician can be a powerful tool.
Absolutely, and that's actually where I wanted to go with you with this is, one, hearing you've been an organizer, two, knowing, you know, starting this interview with that you are a musician and you're an effective musician. You're also an effective storyteller. In those two realms, which one do you feel power resides in the most for you?
Interesting.
Or do you have a division between that? Like how do you see organization, activism, and music working? Which one is most powerful for you as an activist organizing?
That's a good question, and it's something I wrestle with because it's a really difficult answer. If my music wasn't moving people like towards putting work into social justice organizing, I wouldn't do it. And I'm not saying I wouldn't do it as a matter of principle. I just know that I would stop doing it because I'd be bored. Right. And I'd be depressed. Like, I'd feel pointless. I don't want to... And I'm not saying that people shouldn't do that, because music's important, whether it's political or not. Like, it helps people through really hard situations. It saved my life when I was a kid, you know? Like, and it changed my life. Right. And, I mean, punk rock folks know this so well. Same with hip-hop. I mean, it can save your life. And it can steer you in the right direction often, you know? So, when I think about like the hierarchy of those three, for me, I've always been a political musician. My first song was called America Wants a War, right? And this is before Iraq, you know, and Afghanistan. So it's always been tied. And when I'm telling stories, I feel like my storytelling developed from introducing my songs. And so often when I'm like introducing a song, I'll be like playing the guitar, and it's clear that like my brain functions by playing the guitar while thinking, and it's all wrapped up in this thing. But for the last like 4 years, when I was really doing hardcore organizing with veterans, I was playing very little music. I was playing occasionally at an event, and I was usually organizing the event too, so I was always playing the shortest set and, you know, syncing with the ship. If we had to cut time, I cut my own time. And I was saying to myself, your music's not that important. Your organizing's important. Music is just music. And I started to realize, like, all these veterans I know are really, they listen to my music. They're influenced by my music. My music helped them out, you know? And I started to think, you know, why do I not prioritize this more? Like, what is more important about me being the stressed out one, figuring out when everyone can get on a conference call, that's not important about me, like, lifting people's spirits up, giving them perspectives and stories. And, like, a lot of them, like, a lot of my songs, I have a lot of songs about Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. They're my friends' stories. I've taken their stories and like put them in the song so other people can hear them. And a lot of folks really appreciate that because it validates their experience. They know that they don't have to be the one always telling their story, but there's somebody else telling their story too who gets it and who cares and is doing it for the right reason. So all those things led me to, like, I don't know, being this like storyteller with 10-minute introductions to 3-minute songs, and it's like people enjoy it. But I think if I was just sitting there telling stories without a song every 10 minutes, it'd be kind of boring. So it all kind of works, you know?
Do you have anything that's going to be released? Do you have plans for that? And if you do, what is it and when is it?
Good question. Well, I have 13 CDs. So I just released one in July called Ordinary Heroes. It's dedicated to Howard Zinn. It's like a commemorative to Howard Zinn. And it's kind of the last 2 years of my experiences in the world. Largely, like, there's songs about the Tea Party and about sort of the right-wing thing that was going on, about the wars and stuff. And the last song on it is the first song I wrote about the Arab Spring. and Wisconsin. So the next album, which is going to be called Today and Tomorrow, and that's going to come out sometime probably in the winter now. That album is full of like Occupy songs, Arab Spring songs, songs about the indignados in Spain, and then other songs about feminism, about male feminism, songs about just like dealing with personal hardship within being an activist. You know, I've tried to like write a few more songs recently. Not tried to, I've had to because of the situations in my life. I came of age in a punk scene on the East Coast, like the late 90s anarchist crust punk scene, and it was so political. I mean, it was like unavoidably political. Like, you were a fool if you came to one of those shows and didn't realize like that it was like, go to the streets, get involved, learn about this organization, like go to this. And it was just like, oh, okay. And I loved it. And that's partly why I'm so political, you know? But at the same time, I think that the relationship between anarchism and punk has been a blessing and a curse. And I say that because I think that anarchism in, say, well, in some other countries right now, but pretty much globally, anarchism is very much tied to the punk scene. Even if you go to like Peru, you go to Argentina, like a lot of the anarchists are in the punk scene. And when we look at like history, even in the United States, of anarchism, it was more tied to the immigrant working class. So when we talk about the first May Day, that was immigrants. That was German immigrants, it was Italian immigrants, and they were workers. And they were working in the unions, in the industrial unions. And they were anarchists. And a lot of them were also members of socialist or communist parties too on the political end. And anarchism in the United States has very much lost any roots within the working class. And that's mostly true. There's definitely working class folks who come into the punk scene and get involved in the anarchist scene, but like, you go to a lot of events and there's a lot of anarchists there, and a lot of them, like, they don't know what it's like to work a long day. And because of that, I'm not saying it makes them bad people, but because of that, it affects how anarchism is replicated, how it's propagated, and how it's understood by people. I feel like I have one foot in my right-wing working class extended family, and then I have this other foot in like the dropout culture of the anarchist punk scene. And so I think my music, I try to kind of walk both of those.
Usually musically, most musicians, young musicians, aspire toward a particular type of pop icon, like status, you know, like the objective is usually to reach as many people as you can reach, because that's your most effective tool. What's your feelings about where you'd like to see yourself go?
That's a great question.
And how that operates as the most effective tool?
Yeah, that's a huge question. And it's great. I was just talking about this earlier today with somebody. You know, like, I know some mainstream musicians, I know some big name people who are political, and I've seen the effect they have, and it's a good effect. Like, I think it should be there as long as the mainstream is there. Why not have good people in it doing good things, you know? And there's bands out there right now, like, who are huge, like Rise Against, and they're saying really important things. They're saying really good things. They're putting their money in good places, and they're nice people, and they really give a shit. And I like that. I don't think I'm built for that world. I don't think I could be. However, I don't want to just play to like 10 people every time I go on tour. And I've long believed that if I'm going to be more popular as a musician, it's going to be because the movements I'm singing about are getting more popular. And so people are coming out to the shows. So that's the activist in me being like, I got to build those movements then. If I want to sing to more people, I need to bring more people into the movement. At the same time, well, right now Occupy has brought so many more people out. And suddenly my 14-song economic album called The New Enclosures is suddenly like my most popular CD, when before it was like, you're crazy, dude. Like, who writes 14 folk songs about the economy? Boring. Now post-Occupy, it's like, where's the economic CD you were talking about? It's like, oh, here it is. So it's interesting. But what I've been trying to do is, because I'm really inspired by Crass, right? Crass was like the punk band that changed my life. Crass and Operation Ivy. Crass because of everything about them, the way they operated, so DIY, they did everything themselves. They started the whole like DIY anarcho-punk ethic, and they changed punk, and they changed young anarchism in such a way by themselves. Not by themselves, they had people around. I really respect that, and I feel really tied to it. So like, I've never been on a record label. I don't think I'd want to be on a record label. I've always done it myself. And I started a thing called Riot Folk. That's 9 people. We're a collective, political folk music collective. There's probably a bunch more people out there who would enjoy my music, who'd enjoy the stories, who'd find benefit from them, and who'd probably dig it. And I shouldn't feel selfish or weird about that or conceited. It's just like, there's probably people out there who dig this. If they heard about it, how do they hear about it? How can I be better about, contacting the right people? It's a matter of like, how do I like bring all these people to common places? And then another question, what are the common places?
If you had all the money in the world, what would you do with it?
I'd redistribute it. Yeah, I mean, I would try to get rid of it as quickly as possible first, so I don't get killed. Democratic redistribution. That's the issue, right?
Right.
And I think that like the main story I'm telling recently on tour, like the overall thing and the whole theme of my next album is victory doesn't always come tomorrow. It doesn't always come like in the package you think it's going to come in. And sometimes in social movements, and especially in mass social movements and revolutionary social movements, we get these big expectations about what's going to come of it. And when we don't get them, we get depressed, we get burned out, we drop out. I've seen this happen to countless friends of mine in the anti-globalization movement. We thought we were going to have like a revolution at some point. I mean, and the sad thing is that the anti-globalization movement, as the media called it, was extremely effective. We won in a large way. No one realized it here. Everyone was just, I shouldn't say no one, that's an exaggeration, but most people didn't recognize it. They were depressed. They thought it was a failure. A couple years later, I was like, holy crap. I was part of this huge, massive, successful, globalized movement. That's awesome. Occupy movement, here we are. Huge expectations now. We're in this like time period where everyone's like, what happened to Occupy? I thought it was going to be the vehicle. And it's like, for a lot of young people and old people alike who are new to this sort of world because of Occupy, I can understand that. For me, I'm like, y'all just like totally reignited the country. You changed the debate. It was just the Tea Party before this. Like, the left was just fucked. I mean, it was bad. Wisconsin was like the beginning of this.
Right.
And it wasn't like Wisconsin was the first people to try that. Arizona tried to do the same thing against the Tea Party, and they just didn't light the spark well enough. Wisconsin, somehow the time was right. The Arab Spring was going on and the spark got lit. That's huge. You can't, lighting a spark and getting a whole country ignited is a hard thing to do, and it happened. It's brilliant, and I'm excited for what's going to come of it. And we can't be so nostalgic about the past that we forget to be in the present and look towards the future. We have to look towards the past as an inspiration. Remember Zuccotti Park on October 10th when it was popping off. Remember when they marched in Oakland and shut down the port with the tens of thousands of people. Remember that. Be inspired by it. But like, it's not going to happen every day, and it doesn't need to.